Welcome to the ReNewy Living Podcast, the show for people who want to live sustainably without the global overwhelm. We're here to lighten your environmental load. We celebrate local sustainability across Australia and connect you to the solutions and people already doing great things for a healthier planet. Living sustainably starts with good humans like you, people who care about the natural environment, our communities, and the everyday spaces we live in. Each conversation helps you feel reassured that living lighter on the planet is achievable and genuinely feels good to be a part of. From the lands of the Awabakal and Worimi people in Newcastle, Australia, join me, Marty Lee, as we explore how to consume less, build stronger community connections, and thrive in your neighbourhood, wherever you call home. Welcome to the ReNewy Living Podcast. Hello, my name's Marty Lee and welcome to the ReNewy Living Podcast. Sewing your own clothes might seem a bit crazy when you can buy every type of clothing at the click of a button. But for home sewist Jessie Brent from Made by Me Jessie B, whipping out the sewing machine, whether it's to make something new or to redesign a piece, is second nature. What started out of necessity and cultural expectations has grown into a real passion, both for sewing and for being part of a slower fashion community. Jessie works at her local repair cafe, sews with fabrics that would otherwise go to landfill, and helps others become confident with the lost skill and art of sewing. G'day, Jessie.
Hi, Marty. Thank you for having me. I'm so very excited to be talking on your podcast about my favourite topic, sewing.
And it even makes it even more favourite because here we are in your sewing room.
Yes, my sewing room. So my sewing room is the original kitchen in our house and I share it with my laundry. So I'm looking currently at my washing machine. It reminds me that I do need to hang out a load. However, the rest of the space is quite tiny because our house is an older house. So I have my fabrics stacked almost to the ceiling. It's pretty close. It is a little space. So I have my 2 sewing machines and an overlocker. And then I have all my little bits and pieces that it is my sanctuary in our house. And I love just looking at the fabric. That's an enjoyment of mine, the fabric.
Well, the fabric to me is like when you go into a stationery shop and you go into the new stationery shop and if you're that way inclined, looking at all the colours and the feels.
Yes.
And does it feel like that?
Yes, it does. Because when I organise my fabric, I do go through and reorganise my room when it gets a bit overwhelming. And then I actually categorised all my fabric into colours. So I actually sew a lot with oranges and yellows. So I'm just like, I have a lot of blue fabric, not that much yellow and orange now because I've just sewn a whole heap of it up.
And you're currently wearing an outfit that you designed for Christmas.
I did. So Peppermint Magazine is one of my absolute favourite magazines for sustainability and creativity. Australian-based, female-led, it is award-winning, and they release sewing patterns. And my little sort of like issue is that I like to be the first person to sew that pattern when it's released out. And so the latest dress pattern came out just before Christmas and I threw everything, all my other previous projects, they all got pushed off to the side. And I had a tablecloth that I had thrifted and I used that to make the dress. And that was my Christmas Eve and Christmas Day dress. And then because I try hard not to make the colours only significant to like one event, I do like Christmas fabric, but I wanted to be able to wear it for the rest of the year. So I thought, what an appropriate dress to be wearing while I chat to Marty in my sewing room about my favourite hobby.
How did you actually start your hobby?
How did I
Big
start?
story.
Big story.
What's
Okay.
your journey story?
Short story, long story. So long story is I grew up in Wallsend, local girl, and my mum is a single mum, but she's also quite a traditionalist. And she said to me when I was 8, if I learned how to sew, she would teach me how to cook. And I think more so that I could be self-sufficient, but it was the 90s and everyone did want a husband. So having these skill sets did mean that you could potentially be a more agreeable partner choice. I don't know if Scott would agree with that, my current
and Scott's your husband.
So Wallsend has always been known for its op shops. It has always had, for me, a big impact. We were, we had a modest income being a single parent. So we would go down to the op shops at Wallsend, and I went down when I was 8, and they had the Reader's Digest Guide to Sewing, which is my Bible, and I still have it. It's in my wardrobe. I often Google things if I need it, information on sewing tasks, but the Reader's Digest actually has everything that I could possibly need. So I brought that book home and I started to read it. As you do at 8, you teach yourself a new skill. And my mum had a sewing machine. She did a knit-wit course when I was much younger. So she made one top and then that was her sewing journey finished. So I took it up. My grandmother, my dad's mum, was an amazing seamstress. She made wedding dresses, and my auntie Ruth, she could sew as well. But I didn't know that at the time. So I taught myself from reading the book and playing with the machine and the sewing machine manual. If you've ever come to any of my Learn to Sew classes with Under the Sunny and Scout, you will know that the sewing machine manual, please bring it with you. Because it has all the information you could possibly need to sew your clothes.
Does that mean like the stitches that you need or what settings?
Yes. Yeah, so most sewing machines have their manuals online. So you can find the beautiful, industrious people on the internet. They love to put all the manuals up there. So you can just Google your sewing machine manual, but it actually has the how to troubleshoot your sewing machine, how to get started. And your really old sewing machine manuals had simple projects to start off with. So they are a really great resource. So I read that and I started sewing, and I can now sew and cook.
Wow.
Right?
Too much desired skills.
Right, for that stay-at-home mum vibe that I love. I love that.
When did you realise that sewing was your real passion, as you were, particularly in those teenage years to your 20s, where it can be deemed as a little bit daggy, but was actually potentially cool?
I have always kind of not marched to the beat of my own drummer, but I did want to fit in at school, but I did year 7 to 10 at St. Pius, and I sewed. We did the sewing classes, and then in year 10, we did our school certificate in the hall, and we actually all sat there and had to hand sew the different types of stitches for the hems. And I remember everybody else was doing these like math exams and English and science, and they were like looking at us, and we were like sitting there contentedly sewing away, like while they were doing all these like, brainy subjects. And I just thought it was so funny that we were just like having the same exam, but just with a completely different skill set. And it was great. And then I went to St. Francis Xavier's and I did sewing with Mrs. Tate. And I still quote Mrs. Tate when I teach and I sew the buttons, so teaching the sewing on the buttons, I still use that same method. Thrifting wasn't what I really did then. I much preferred to wear like the brand named clothes. But then as I, went through uni, and you kind of viewpoint changes when you meet more people outside of your school social groups, and you're less inclined to want to fit with the crowd. You kind of just like, you want to be a little bit different. You want to stand out with that. And then you start hanging out with people from other countries who have a different viewpoint on sewing and clothes as well. So that I still then was in that overconsumption mode. Like we'd go out in town and you'd need a new outfit. Or you'd want to go to the movies and you're like, well, I'm going on a date to the movies. I better get a new outfit. That sort of stayed with me till I was probably to my late 20s, probably mid-20s. When I met Scott, that sort of slowed down because our priorities shifted in from that sort of like finding someone to be with to, oh, well, I've got you. Now what?
Your partner, Scott, when you met him, you have a really lovely sewing story to share.
Yes. So my beautiful bestie, Adriana, she lived right in at Newcastle. And they were having this killer Australia Day party. Now, I was younger. I didn't quite realise the cultural significance like I do now. But it is our anniversary because I rocked up to Adriana's like epic party on Newcastle Beach, DJ. Oh, so good. It's one of the best parties I've ever been to. And I was mid-20s. I had a bikini on and a handmade skirt. I had gone to the op shop, I'd got some fabric, and then I made a very simple rectangle skirt with a drawstring. It didn't have any elastic in it, didn't even have the seams finished inside. It was just this sheer blue, and I still have it. It's very cute. And that's what I was wearing when I met Scott. And he was like, hey. And I was like, hey. And we've been together ever since. There is a longer story to that story, but that's a different podcast in and of itself.
And then so now your sewing has continued into your journey together.
Yes.
Where I've come to your place today and you've got fabric pieces on the floor ready as part of your next needs to happen right now project.
Yes. So Newcastle is amazingly vibrant with creatives. We have such a lovely group of people that sew, that create, that screen print, that embroider, and they're all in different age groups as well. So I met up with, through Instagram, I call them the sewing ladies who lunch, and whoever's free, we meet up at the bowling club. And these beautiful ladies were like, well, the world celebrates sewing with frock tails. So frock tails is an event where people who create their own clothes get together in their handmade clothes, drink champagne, eat canapes, and talk to other like-minded creatives. So this beautiful group of ladies that I have lunch with, they were like, well, let's do Newcastle. Let's get Newcastle's frock tails up and going. I do have plenty of clothes in my wardrobe. But part of sewing is challenging yourself to try something new, something, a little bit risque. So I'm actually making, upcycling a curtain that I got from the op shop. And my sister Zoe's bestie, Laura, Nonna, she was a sewist as well. And when Nonna passed away, Laura and her family kindly gifted me a whole heap of her materials and sewing supplies. So I've been working my way through her sewing supplies, and some of that was her lace curtains. So I've dyed those and I'm currently patchworking them to make part of my outfit for that. There's lots of different sewing styles around the world. Like there's all names to that, but one of the Korean sewing styles, I'm going to say this wrong and I do apologize, bojagi, is where you take smaller pieces that are offcuts and join them together to make new fabric and then re-sew a garment. This is like a polyester chiffon looking sheer curtain, cost me a couple of dollars, and I'm turning it into my outfit for this beautiful sewing event. And I obviously left it to like the last minute because it's coming up and it's hours of work, but it's so worth it. It does take up a lot of space though. It's all over the floor in the kids' playroom. So
that's one of the, I suppose, is it a downside when you become a sewer or a sewist? Actually, you've said it's a sewist. This is a really great question to ask you because the word sewer, I like the word sewer, someone who sews. However, in the English language, when it's written down,
looks like
sewer.
Yes.
So that's not a good connotation. So what is the difference between a sewer and a sewist?
Marty, this is that topic. That is a big topic. That is its own podcast. So a lot of people, I'm what I would classify as a home-based sewist. So sewist in general doesn't really have any sort of gender connotation to it as well. I like the word sewer as well, but you're right, when you write it down, you could say sewer. That's the... but if you were to say that I would never classify myself as a seamstress, I'm not trained in sewing. I don't have any formal education in sewing apart from what I did at high school. So I've not gone to TAFE. I've not gone to university for sewing. I'm not a tailor. A tailor is also a very specific group of people who do a very specific type of sewing. And there's a lot of different opinions on this. If you Facebook group this one, you're going to be like, the comments, they'll be like coming at you. So I prefer to call myself a home-based sewist, or I'm a sewer, which I kind of like that it's gender neutral because you're not really like seamstresses generally tend to have like that female vibe, whereas a tailor tends to have that male vibe, typically is how people interpret that. but I am neither. I basically am aspiring stay-at-home mum who makes her own clothes. So I prefer sewist.
I'd like to go back to your earlier conversation about when you were at school and you were doing your sewing exam and everyone else was busy doing their maths exam. I've done a bit of hand sewing myself. I've tried the sewing machine and I feel like I need to persist a little bit longer with it. But I actually find from your story that even though those people were doing maths and you were doing your sewing, I feel like there's a lot of maths in sewing.
Yes.
But it's not the algebra maths.
No.
There's a lot of geometry that goes on.
Yes.
I mean, is that one type of skill that you need for sewing?
It is. Not to start off with, if you're starting out sewing, you don't really need to fully grasp the whole of the sort of concept of sewing. It's like when you first start learning a language, you're only kind of getting the bits and pieces, and then as you evolve, you understand and grasp more context and the concepts behind it. Math is not my strongest point. English is more my strong point. Even then, when you're learning how to do a task, the written instructions can sometimes not make any sense at all because it is a language. It is. So when you start out, you start with the simpler projects and then you sort of build on that. But the geometry, the main thing when I teach sewing is to point out to people that we are not two-dimensional people, right? Our bodies are three-dimensional. So geometry and maths and the angles and how shapes come together to create our clothes and fit, that's really important. You can do math-based sewing where you do your measurements and you grid it out. And I've met some amazing people who are great at that. I'm not so good at that. And I'm going to add a little word in here because this is my key word for anyone who's learning or even wanting to have that sort of like improvement in skill. The word is yet, Y-E-T, yet. This word is so powerful. When I first started sewing, was like, I'm not drafting my clothes. And my mother-in-law was like, well, why don't you draft your own patterns? And I'm like, oh, it's not my thing. It's not what I'm into. And what I should have been putting into the end of that sentence is it's not my thing yet. So I now draft my own patterns because I haven't.
Sorry, drafting means doing a practice one first?
To draft a pattern is to make a piece of clothing from scratch yourself based off your measurements or based off a simple measurement. So you're drawing the outline of what you're sewing and it's very technical. A drafts person is its own career and it is its own hobby. It is a separate, so I have a very basic knowledge of drafting. But what the word yet means is that when I was having that conversation a couple of years ago, I wasn't using that word and I was kind of boxing myself in. So when I talk about sewing now, when I teach, I'm just like, you can't do this yet. So when you start out sewing and you start thinking, oh, I want to have like the math, I don't have math, I don't have English, you don't really need it yet. So as you grow with your craft, you then grow into that skill set. And the geometry, my body is my own body. And I have to say sewing is hands down the best thing for just body neutrality, not positivity, not negative, just being neutral. Because the more you delve into this, the more you understand that ready-to-wear clothes or RTW, ready-to-wear clothes are based off a generalization of people's sizes. My body's not a generalization. It's my body. So that geometry of curve, yes, it is. That's where your math comes into play.
Is that what got you into it a little bit more as you were an adult? By the time you could see that ready to wear off the shop kind of mass produced compared to this is what I can actually make at home?
Yes. So in my 20s, not many curves. Heading into my 30s, a few more little curves were happening there after the kids. And you have time. Time is precious. I would go to the shops. Oh my God. And I would have my baby with me and I just want something to fit, but I only had a little bit of time. And you'd go to the shops and you would stand in front of the mirror in these change rooms and you would put the clothes on and you would put another pair of clothes on and nothing fit. And the shops, whether they mean to or not, intent is different. It made it feel like it was me. I was the problem. It was my body that didn't work with the clothes. Everybody else seems to be able to buy these clothes and fit these clothes. It is my problem, my body. So you would be like, okay, well, you know what? I need to exercise more, or I need to change my diet more. I was breastfeeding a baby and I was tired. It was my first baby. And yeah, I really loved a rotisserie chicken and some Skittles, like sue me. So the curves were there and I was stressed and I was tired. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm spending all this time at the shops trying to find clothes that fit me. And that's kind of where this next stage of my journey, like that path travel, this is where I am now, is that I have not necessarily a positivity towards my body or a negativity. It's more that my skill set is challenged from getting things to fit me. So you don't really even think about that in terms of, it's just a challenge of the skill. And so the only thing I would say is that your fabric, you just need more fabric. If you have more fabric, then you can make any sort of adjustment to what you need.
Where do you love sourcing your fabric from?
I adore fabric, and fabric collecting is a different hobby to sewing. Okay.
I have heard this.
Yes, it is. They are interconnected. True. So when we talk about fabric, there is many, many, many different types of fabric. So when I source fabric, because I try to use pre-existing fabrics, like fabrics that have been at the op shop, clothes that are already in existence, dead stock fabric. I like to create my own fabric as well. So there's a beautiful screen printing kit that I use by Ink and Oranges. And it is so much fun for creating your own fabric on sheets that have been in the op shop. You could cover up some stains on dresses and tops, and you can just really have that creative sort of vibe going. And it's fun with the kids. The kids like to design things and then I screen print them. The other thing is potato printing, like you just block print on fabric. So when I source fabric, it depends. If you want to shop local, so accessibility, not everyone has the ability to access all the different op shops. If you're buying new fabric and you're buying quality fabric and you're buying it from small independent shops, so if I'm not necessarily going to be buying secondhand fabrics, I try and use fabrics that are natural-based fibres. And so Zigzag is right near me at Waratah. You've got Sew B in at Newcastle. And when I'm feeling particularly flush, I will jump in and get some Marimekko fabric from Papa's Fen. If we're talking op shop wise, most of those places have fabrics. I actually use a lot of doonas. I use doonas and tablecloths, tea towels, pillowcases. There's a lot of fabric in a pillowcase. Like you can just combine those two together. So the dress that I'm wearing today is from a really large tablecloth that I managed to get, which is this beautiful cotton green and sort of ivory grid. It's lovely. One of my favorite places to go to is the Survivors Are Us op shop out at Cardiff. So they are a domestic violence, homelessness and unemployment support. They have a beautiful group of volunteers there that use donated fabrics to sew up items that they then sell to raise money to support the business. And they have like a food kitchen, they have breakfast, they have teas. It's a community gathering point. So I'll actually go out there because they have like linen, doona covers and sheets. Like a sheet is, you can make a lot from a queen bed sheet.
There's I just went to the Waste to Art exhibition at Lake Macquarie. That's on every year. And one of the winners for this year just gone was Mel Hicks from Second Purpose Creations. And she sews clothes that are Marie Antoinette style, which requires meters and meters of fabric. And when she started out, she couldn't afford to go to the big material fabric places. So she is like you. She's just gone to the op shops and she's started off with doonas and the sheets and those, and even wedding dresses and upcycled wedding dresses, just because there's the fabric available and it really fits in with the style of the dresses that she's doing as well. So that's a really hot tip.
Yes, and it's the meterage. Fabric that is of quality is generally, it does add up. So to make the dress that I'm wearing today, you need 3 meters plus. So if you're saying that it's $25 a meter, it's just not on sale, just regular fabric. Like I sew a lot. I sew quite a lot of clothes for myself and for others, and I sell and I pattern test. I'm going to need a lot of fabric. So when you purchase fabric that's already in existence, not only is your environmental footprint lower, you're actually able to be kind of like a little less precious on it. You can feel free enough to make mistakes, like be like, oh, it didn't really work out, but I can make it into something else. You can relax. And then the more you relax, the more when you do get your precious fabric, that you kind of feel that confidence to sew it. So one of the questions Marty was, when we were chatting before, was asking was like, do you have an emotional connection to your clothes? And then how does that relate to when you get rid of them? Yes, I have an emotional connection.
Is that because you've made them yourself?
Yes. And some of the fabrics are special. So Kate got me this fabric for my birthday. She contacted one of my favorite sewing shops down in Sydney. We have the Selvage Society. And that piece of clothing that I made from Kate has that story. It had me learning from when she got it for me, being like, I don't have that skill set. And then I used my favorite word, yet. So I held on to it till I found a project that I knew could do that fabric justice. So, and then that's the old chicken and the egg. Do you buy the fabric first or do you buy the pattern first? Like, how does this working? I do a bit of both.
Let's go to your fabrics. As a home sewist, are most of your fabrics cotton-based?
Yes, and also at the same time, no. Because I use a lot of secondhand fabrics, they can have a mixed fibre. So my hand embroidered, Marty at the moment is just looking at one of my cross-stitched tablecloths. It's hand cross-stitched. It's beautiful. It will be a cotton or a cotton linen or a linen. So unless I'm willing to cut into it to kind of test that fibre, I'm only kind of estimating here. Some of the sort of vintage fabrics will have a tag on it. So I've just recently made a dress out of a tablecloth. It was this beautiful yellow, and the tag is like made in Poland, and it is actually a linen polyester blend. So some fabrics you'll find at the op shop and you think, oh my God, is this silk? Like, is someone, but it'll be a polyester. And you can do a little test on your fabric. But yes, I do primarily like a natural fibre, especially for sheets and stuff. But people would make sheets out of polyester and polyester blend. And I'm like, you're basically wearing
a shower curtain.
You're wearing a plastic drink bottom. You're wearing a shower curtain.
Yeah, I feel like every time I see those polyester materials, particularly of the cheaper fast fashion variety, oh gosh, they feel like an awful polyester. But it also must be nicer to sew with a cotton or a cotton poly blend rather than a shiny.
Yes. So the skirt that I'm making for Frocktails is 100% plastic bottle. It is polyester chiffon curtain. So I am aware of when I'm sewing that the microplastics that are coming off that make. So that is one consideration, but I'm just like, otherwise this curtain is just going to landfill. So I may as well
exactly. You've upcycled it right from the beginning, even though it's polyester.
There are like the pros and cons to working with secondhand fabrics in that sometimes you don't know the fiber content, and depending on the age of the fabric as well. So if it's like I think your polyester is like, your 60s and your 70s fabrics, a lot of those are like shower curtains. They are 100% polyester, but they're pretty. So like they're really good for doing bags and doing cushions, something that you're not going to have on your body. And then a lot of your stretch fabrics as well. Your stretch fabrics are cotton and they'll have elastane in them as, to give them that stretch and recoil. Your stretchy jeans, like when you're upcycling those are so annoying to work with because they have the elastic in them. But yeah, so I try my very hardest, but then I'm also like, it's like buying the new fabric and buying the secondhand fabric. I do primarily secondhand, and then I have the nice quality new stuff that I get as well. I'm a sucker for a cat print. A new cat print or something like novel and cute. I'll be like, yes,
You're in.
I'm in. I'm like,
absolutely.
I love that. And then, but I do not throw any scraps away. In front of where Marty's sitting right now is a bag. And it's one of my art projects that I'm working on, and it is fabric scraps. And if they're big enough scraps, I will plait them and I will upcycle chairs.
So the scraps are in the size of a pillowcase cover bag.
Yes. So I have saved all of my scraps and I don't chuck any away. I mean, obviously some still get into the bin, like if they're swept up or if they're caught by the vacuum cleaner. But I think it's more like that I'm trying my hardest. Like I'm not going to be perfect because I think then I would burn out and it would be very stressful and then I wouldn't create anything.
Where do you see the link between making your own clothing to being more sustainable?
That's hard. So we currently on our planet have enough clothing already for 6 generations. So if I was to stop sewing and all of the other fashion houses, everyone was to stop making, there is enough already in existence. And I think that's where the repair side of things comes into, is repairing what we have. But a lot of the clothes that are in existence aren't going to fit me, or they're not going to fit my style, or they're not going to be comfortable. I don't like it. They're scratchy. They're too stretchy. They're not stretchy enough. That clothing that's already in existence, we can repurpose it and make it fun and new. Like I made a little dress for my little bae. It was a men's shirt, and that men's shirt was stained. I washed it. I tried to get the stains out, best of my ability, and they weren't coming out. So I turned it into a little dress. Now, there are already enough clothes for Phoebe to have a little dress that's already at the op shop. But now she's got something that's cute. Part of the fabric matches one of my dresses, so we can be like matchy samesies. And she knows that I've spent the time making something for her. So in terms of sustainability, I am probably an overconsumer of fabric. I will say that honestly. And I make so many pieces of clothing. But what is happening is that I'm making the clothing. It is my hours of time that go in there. What I'm saying is that where I've got my clothes, I can repair them, I can make them fit. And then I now have connections where I can find homes for my clothes that aren't going to end up in landfill. When I make clothes for other people, I'll say, hey, if you don't need them anymore, please give them back and I will find a new home, or I'll repair it, or I'll assume responsibility for the recycling of those clothes. And that's something that is hard in Newcastle, is the textiles recycling. So I think we have a lot of work to do, but at the same time, I have fun. Sewing is fun. Sewing is my hobby.
And I think when you have fun, you find the time to do something that you enjoy doing and that you're good at doing, or you need to practice a different kind of style. That makes a big difference.
Yes, style. So I don't know about anybody else, but my style is not the same as when I was in my 20s or when I was in my teenage years. And it's not even the same style as when I was pregnant. I wore a lot of navy when I was pregnant. I'm not really a navy person now. So that changing of style and how that flows into your clothing consumption, and you kind of want to change. Like sometimes you want to be like, oh, do I like this? Is this going to work? Here we go. Excellent example. Peppermint Magazine released the fern pleated pants. I would have thought with my body shape, I've got some beautiful curves, whatever you want to call them. I would have thought that the pleats at the front of the pants would have emphasized my mummy tummy. No, actually, it was the opposite. The pleats, just that the pants fit so well. I'm like, oh my God, these pants are hands down so good that I've made like 3 or 4 pairs of them now. So I used a sheet and I dyed it a different color. I used some upcycled denim. I've had some new fabric as well. And I now have consumed, 4 pairs of pants. However, I've now got 4 pairs of pants that fit me, that are well made.
And that you love.
I love. I can repair them if they break. They sort of suit my style. One of the pairs of pants, I used a sheet and my ink and oranges screen printing kit and put strawberries all over them and then made a matching top. So it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You can actually challenge your style and try something new. And then if it doesn't work, well, you've spent some time on something that you want to do. And if it doesn't work, then it's also okay. You learn.
But you give it a go. And the only thing do you see it as a loss is the amount of time you've put into it? No, you see it as a learning curve. It's not necessarily a loss. It's everything in life is a learning opportunity.
Getting things to fit when you're sewing is it's a next achievement level. It is challenging, and then you move on, and then you keep finding new things to getting a top to fit an E and F cup bust. It has been but it's something that I can reflect back on and be 2 years ago, I couldn't do it. And now I am not great at it, but I can do it. It just, it's one of those it's a marker of time.
Thanks, Jess, for your conversation today. What's one simple tip to encourage listeners to sew their own clothes, or to at least start sewing?
Okay. So It's one of the things that when you're starting a new hobby, I am guilty of this. I love a hobby. I love a new craft. I love novelty. I love to purchase things for the craft. When it comes to sewing, there are a lot of resources. My first foray into sewing was I purchased a book from the op shop. Okay, so secondhand books, there are a lot of magazines that are full of crafting tips and ideas, is to find the inspiration. Kind of like just be inspired. You don't have to spend heaps of money. You can go to the library. Newcastle and Wallsend Library, Lake Macquarie has the Makers Hub. There are books that you can borrow that give you projects. And if you do not have a sewing machine, feel like I don't have a sewing machine, the libraries have sewing machines that you can use that are there. The Maker's Place, you can go and do a class. So I teach sewing for Lucy, who runs Sunny and Scout. So we teach beginner sewing. Like I teach the very basic sewing on a button. What is the sewing machine? What are we doing? Why are we here? That sort of sewing. I very much enjoy that. But when you're first starting, just finding that inspiration, it is Pinterest, you've got Instagram, and you've got Facebook. So those are your like really basic first steps into starting. And then once you go from there, you can kind of, once again, be very mindful though that you can just jump in really quickly and then be like, oh, I've overcommitted and I don't want to do this anymore. And now you have all this stuff. So kind of like tread carefully. I do that. I love a.
Yes, and as you were saying before, there is a difference between the fabric collecting and the sewing.
Yes.
So being mindful of that. So the tip for beginner sewers is to find where your inspiration is. Head to your local library for borrowing books and also borrowing sewing machines.
Yes. A lot of people will have a sewing machine. They're like, oh, I've got my mum's sewing machine. It's just in the cupboard. One of my sewing machines came from the tip shop. You can repair what you already have, like your sewing machines, just get them serviced. Most of the people are like, oh, my sewing machine doesn't work. I'm like, have you serviced it? Like, take it to a service guy. Fabric de-stashes. Now, that's a place to go if you want to have your fabric. Fabric shops in terms of secondhand fabrics when you're starting out. There's an online op shop. There's the Sewing Basket down at Kincumber. There's the Maker's Place out at Teralba. All of these people have access and information and knowledge when you're first starting out, and you can just sort of chat. Be very careful though if you ask a sewist about their outfit, just FYI, it's really hard. How much information do you want about dress?
And what do you mean by that?
Do you want how I sewed it? Do you want to know how I made it? Any mistake? Like you ask me about my outfit, I'm going to be like, how much time have you got to listen to my favorite topic of conversation? So like people are like, oh, I like your outfit. And I have to be like, do you want to know about it? Like, can I?
Are you a sewer or you're just commenting that it's a really lovely outfit?
Do you want me to info dump on you? Because I will more than happily do that. And my main thing that I have come across when I'm teaching adults how to sew, right? I'm not a teacher. And the main thing I have noticed that a lot of adults are afraid of making mistakes. So my one thing, they're just like, it's not perfect. It's wonky. It's not straight. I'm like, most of the times I'm just like, if anyone comes up to you and says, the hem on your skirt or your pants or your top is wonky, I'm like, why are they so close to you? They need to like step back.
Wow, and for someone to even mention that.
Yeah, because people overstep boundaries. And if you have not asked them for feedback, my one thing is unsolicited feedback and advice is criticism until proven otherwise. Now, that's very different if you ask for feedback or if you're entering your stuff into competitions, you're going to get feedback from that and it will be unbiased and it will be based on expert opinion. But if a rando family member comes up and like, oh, you'd be like, why are you close to me? Why are you saying these things? Those people aren't people that you need in your creative journey.
And it also shows that what you're doing is a skill and a learned skill and that it's okay to make mistakes. Thanks, Jess, so much for your conversation today. It's been a wonderful roundup of showing how that we need to embrace our imperfections, that we need to experiment, and that it's okay to follow your interests. When we have a passion, we often find time for what we do and love the most. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the ReNewy Living Podcast. I hope you're feeling more confident and invigorated about taking a localised approach to living sustainably. Head over to my website, renewyliving.com.au, for this episode's summary and the relevant links. My ask to you is to follow or subscribe to the ReNewy Living podcast so you can tune in to every episode. And by sharing the episodes you love, it's an easy way to help more people join the conversation about sustainability. I look forward to sharing more stories with you, ones that help lighten your environmental load and feel great to be a part of, so we can build a healthier planet for good. In people and planet kindness, from me, Marty Lee, this is the ReNewy Living Podcast.